Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast. Today with Jacob Magerdan,
Dalton Phillips.
also joined by special guest.
Brendan Phillips, but I go by Julio.
Pretty excited for this upcoming week of games, and to start us all off, you know what we're doing. It's the Mountain Dew segment. Everybody got the Mountain Dews.
Hey, we matched.
Trying to get that sponsor.
Yeah. Hey, hit us up.
Hit us up, Mountain Dew. All right, Dalton, what do you got there? You got the Baja Blast.
Baja Blast. I mean, it's the best. I had to pick it for the best week of college football, and I had to pick my favorite, so I went Baja Blast.
Fair enough. I picked it because we hadn't had it on the show yet, so it's a good week to have two of them. Julio, what you got there?
I got the Voltage.
The Voltage, the GOAT flavor, in my opinion, my personal opinion.
It's pretty good.
How is it? Yes, of course.
Pretty good.
Always legendary. Well, I mean, like I said, this is a good week of games. We've got, it's obviously going to go down from last week. You can't get much better than last week when it comes to the matchups, but this is still a phenomenal slate. And then, of course, we have two massive matchups that have pretty big implications on the playoffs and the SEC. To dive into the picks, first one, as you can see, you got a Thursday night game, so that's why we're starting out with Tech. Tech playing at home against the Boston College team that's 4-2. They've come off a couple losses in the last 3 weeks, and they started dropping games, and that all happens because Thomas Castellanos has faced a lot of injuries here in the last couple weeks. He's not fully healthy. That's definitely a big deal for them. He was their leader. He was the guy. He had really turned around this season, become a much better passer than he'd ever been in his career, and so that's opened up their offense a lot. As you can see, he has 983 yards, 12 touchdowns, and the 4 interceptions, and that's only through 5 of their 6 games. Completely missed a game for them, and then he was also injured against Virginia. On the other side, for Virginia Tech, Kyron Drones really turned it around. He's turned into the guy we expected him to be when we started talking about this team at the beginning of the year. The last 2 games has been really, really great for him. He looked phenomenal against Miami, and then even better against Stanford, where we pretty much dominated in that game. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for both teams.
Yeah, Boston College has maybe one of the more dynamic rushing attacks in college football, and I think it's the reason they win ball games behind Trayshawn Ward, Toby Richard, and Kyle Robichaux. They all have over 200 rushing yards, and that is unheard of for 3 backs to have over 200 rushing yards in most years. And they've got that within 6 games. That's crazy to me. And obviously on Tech, you have Tootin, and Tootin is one of the best running backs in the country. I love watching that guy run the ball.
Yeah, a guy that come from the FCS level, of course, not a lot of respect, for a guy like him. And it's really put on show how good he is. They actually had an interview this week with Elijah Brooks, the running back coach, and he talked about how Bayshul was probably the most dynamic guy he's ever coached, and he's coached multiple NFL running backs. He talks about the level and the ability of Tootin compared to what he's playing against every week. He's on another level. He's played through a knee sprain for the last 4 weeks. That's why he's been wearing the huge brace on his knee. He got the bye week, which is massive. He gets a huge break coming into a game that's obviously very important for our chances in the conference. And, of course, we want to keep those hopes up. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
Drones struggled a little bit earlier this year, and he finally got back to where he was last year, towards the end of the year. But I mean, they got a great running game. It's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I expect it to be a good one. Of course, the rushing attack for both teams, like Dalton had mentioned, is very important. And yes, Drones is a good example of a guy that has had great second halves in both years. And I think it has something to do with the play calling at the beginning of the year. I didn't really like what we were doing on offense. It's reverted back to what we were doing last year.
It's second halves, man. Y'all are just good with second halves. Y'all can't play good in the first half, but it's the second half of a game. Y'all just show out.
Besides the Stanford game.
Yeah.
Y'all played both.
Oh, y'all played good throughout the whole game in that one.
Yeah, that's the situation that's been kind of figured out. Miami and Stanford, we played really well for both halves.
Yep.
It was honestly, the first half against Miami was one of our best first halves we played in the last 5 years. I mean, they played a phenomenal first half. So it is good. It's comforting to see because as a team that wants to compete, you have to lock in and do that all 4 quarters. It's not possible to play just a good half. Looking at the receiving game for both teams, as you can see, Bond is the leading receiver for Castellanos with 30 catches and 358 yards. He's been effective when Castellanos is playing, less effective in the game he missed, but their passing attack in general is not what leads them as a team. On the other side for Virginia Tech, hopefully expecting to have Ollie Jennings back this week, which would be massive because then you have a pretty nice receiver room when you look at guys like Jalen Lane, Daquan Felton, who had his breakout game against Stanford, and then, of course, the Gosnell brothers. You have Benji and Steven Gosnell, who are pretty short targets most of the time. To go ahead and make a pick on this game, I think for me, I'm obviously taking Virginia Tech, but it's a game I actually feel really confident in. It's one of those things where I always said, I'm going to usually pick my favorite team unless I really don't feel confident in it. This is one of those games I feel actually really confident in it. I like Tech on a Thursday night especially. It's a game that we usually perform well, and Lane's going to be jumping. Julio, if you want to go ahead and make your pick.
I'm gonna go Tech in a close one. It just depends how they play in the first half.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tech also because Boston College was really good at the beginning of the year, and injuries have killed them.
Mhm.
And Tech's just different at Lane. It's different. That's one of the hardest places to play in the country. Even though they've been terrible, you could be in bad the last few years, but guess what? If you play at home, you're going to win ball games because it's such a crazy environment.
Yeah, especially. I mean, we've talked about it many times before. It's a sellout crowd every game,
Yep.
and it has been for the last 5 years with teams that were even at 1.3-8.
Yep.
So when you're selling out the stadium with that kind of season, you're always going to expect fans. Next game here, we got Arizona State on the road to Cincinnati. Of course, both these teams are trying to turn around after a rough, couple of years in the past. Kind of the same situation Tech's been in with the coaching issues and guys leaving and having to find the right guy. Cincinnati and Arizona State have both looked like they've done that. Of course, Luke Fickell was a big loss for Cincinnati when they went to Wisconsin. He's kind of turned that program around a little bit, and they've started winning some games here and there. So when you lose a coach like that, it's hard to be good immediately. Looking at the stats for both of these teams, ASU we covered last week for the first time, and Sam Leavitt is amazing. 90 for 152, 1,166 yards, 8 touchdowns. But the big story with him is a guy that got hurt last week and was able to come back out and still play for his team and get a massive victory last week. This is a team that looks to compete in the conference, especially with a win here against the Cincinnati team that's pretty good. Looking at Sorsby on the other side, he has 1,700 yards on the year, 13 touchdowns. That's pretty phenomenal stats. He's played really well this year, and they need him in this game, especially because both these passing attacks have actually been pretty good with good backs. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for both teams.
Scatterboo, he is dirty. Like, he is maybe one of the toughest running backs in college football, in my opinion, because when he runs the ball, it's hard to tackle that guy. For Cincy, we have Corey Kiner. He is their lead back, and he does what he needs to do with a good passing attack there. He's got almost 500 yards in the year, and, I mean, feed the guy the ball a little bit more. Maybe it opens your passing attacks up some more.
Yeah, especially with a good passing attack, it's important to have a back that has almost 500 yards. When your quarterback's doing what he's doing in the air and you can run the ball well, your offense is going to be pretty elite. Looking at the receiving core for both teams, we talked about ASU last week with Jordan Tyson. He was really good last week. We're going to hope that he continues that for them. They need him. On the other side for Cincinnati, you got Xavier Henderson, 34 catches, 474 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is obviously Sorsby's favorite target. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
Well, Arizona State's got a great rushing attack with Scatterboo, and their passing attacks, it's getting better. Cincinnati's gonna throw the ball, obviously.
Going to make a pick here for this game. Arizona State again on the road to Cincinnati. It's not an easy place to play. Cincinnati's actually got a pretty big fan base built off of that 2019 run they had and a lot of other good football teams that they've had over the years. For me, I'm making the pick first. I think Arizona State wins this game. I like Sam Leavitt. I like them to compete in the conference. And then, of course, with Cam Scatterboo, I mean, they're a hard football team to beat when you got him on the ground. Almost 800 yards on the year. Dalton, if you want to go ahead and make your pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go ASU too. I like them quite a bit. They're how good they are behind with the rock in their hands running the ball. And Cincinnati is nowhere near as good as that 2019 team. And I love watching that team, though. But they're nowhere near it, and ASU's going to win this ball game.
Give me Cincinnati.
Julio taking Cincinnati and his quarterback namesake, Brendan Sorsby. He's got to support the other.
I believe in him.
Got to support the other Brendans in the world.
I mean, it's going to be hard to start Scatterboo, but, I mean, I'm taking the upset.
Next game here, we got Nebraska on the road to Indiana. Again, this Indiana football team just continues to win and win and win. And Curt Cignetti is the reason why. A guy that's come in and he made a statement in his press conference. He said, "I just win." They asked him about him as a coach. And, I mean, that's pretty legit. When you got a guy that's that confident in his team and himself, it's creating a winning culture for Indiana football. Diving right into the stats here for both sides. Dylan Raiola at quarterback for Nebraska. A young kid, and we've called him the Patrick Mahomes copycat, but he's got more into the college football game now, and he's not getting made fun of as much for that or getting clowned as much for that. But you can look at his stats. This is a kid that is a kid still. I mean, this is a guy that is 18, 19 years old, freshman quarterback, and he's got 1,358 yards on the year. He's playing pretty daggone good. I mean, that's the best you can ask for, and this Nebraska team is best they've been in a while. It's the same for the other side with Indiana. Transfer Curtis Rourke. Unbelievable addition. You could argue one of the best additions in college football when it comes to the transfer portal. A guy that is now in Heisman talks with 1,750 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's been elite at quarterback this year, and what else can you ask for from a guy that was playing at a small school in the FBS for the last 4 years? Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for both teams, it's pretty important here.
Yeah, Nebraska has one of my favorite rushing attacks in the country because of I like Dowdle and obviously Johnson and Johnson. They just get the rock and they run the ball. And I mean, to be able to run the ball with an offense because Raul is good. I hate on him a little too much, but he's good. And having a runner like that is three running backs like that's good, and that helps you out a bunch. And for Indiana, their rushing game is outstanding for how much they don't run the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton. I mean, they're splitting carries and they're running the ball great because they throw the ball so good. And those two, if you run the ball good, you're going to pass the ball better. It's just that's two things you bounce off of, and it helps out the offense quite a bit.
Yeah, the rushing attack is amazing there. When you, like you said, you have two running backs for them that are both over 60 carries in the year.
Yep.
Both very efficient when they run the ball. It helps them a ton because Indiana's passing attack is legit. And then you can just follow that up with a really good rushing attack and keep your backs healthy with split carries. And really, it's so important in college football to give your guys rest. Looking at the receivers for both teams, Nebraska, big talking point with them is Isaiah Neyor. He's had games this year where he's been amazing. He's had games where he's done absolutely nothing. No receptions against Rutgers. This is the kind of guy that if they get him going with Raiola, he's really unstoppable. Really good receiver. On the other side, Elijah Surratt followed his coach over from JMU. He's been awesome. 29 catches, 513 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that's obviously Rourke's lead target. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
Indiana's got one of the better passing attacks in the country, which nobody really saw coming into the year. No one saw that. And Nebraska's got a true freshman at quarterback, Raiola. He's doing his job.
Yeah.
Really not much you can ask for, like you said. And Surratt, one of the best receivers in the country.
Yeah, playing in Indiana.
I feel like for Indiana to win this game, they're gonna do what they've been doing the whole year: throw the ball.
Yeah, very consistent passing attack, and like I said, with their rushing ability behind that passing attack, it's led to a lot of wins for them. Of course, looking at 6-0 right now, which nobody expected.
And they might be in the conference championship game if they keep
For
on.
me, right now, if I'm picking out of that conference, obviously Oregon, Ohio State, top of the conference, I'd have them number 3. I think they've looked really good this year. And
you never know, they could upset Ohio State. You never know.
I really like this Indiana football team. Going to make a pick here in this game, not very easy. Indiana gets the home game. Dalton, if you want to lead us off making the pick here.
Well, I like Indiana here. They just know how to get the ball around, and they can sling it. They can sling the rock. I know I don't cover. I'm not the big passing guy like you are, but their passing game's elite, and they can run the ball with that too. And I like that. And I just don't like Nebraska because of Raiola.
Fair enough. Julio, if you want to go ahead and lead us second pick.
I'm gonna take Indiana. I like Rourke. He's a great quarterback.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Yeah, I agree with you both. I think Indiana wins at home here. I think Rourke continues his Heisman campaign, and I don't know if he can win it. It's just not a guy that was big enough name prior to the year, but he could make it. He could be there when they select the guys.
I don't think Raiola is ready to. I don't think he's.
I agree with you. I don't think Raiola can beat an Indiana team that has looked really good this year, and they're super competitive. And he's young, and it's okay if he loses games like this in his freshman year. He'll figure things out, and he'll get better down the line. Next game here, Miami on the road playing against Louisville. This is a big one in the conference because Louisville's still in competition for winning this conference, and Miami obviously looks like the favorite so far, although they've been bailed out twice in conference play. Looking at the stats for both of these teams, Cam Ward, I mean, the guy is the best quarterback in the country when it comes to Heisman talk, when it comes to just overall stats. He has 2,200 passing yards and 20 touchdowns on the year. He's phenomenal. He has easily boosted his draft stock a ton. Guy looks like potentially could be the first quarterback selected in next year's draft, and I don't think anybody would have said that coming into this year. On the other side for Louisville, Tyler Shough. Been saying his name wrong the entire time. Figured that out on the broadcast the other night. It's Tyler Shough. The guy has 1,674 passing yards in the year, 14 touchdowns. Also been a pretty elite quarterback. In the games that they've lost, it's not really his fault. He doesn't play bad football ever. And they just don't have the running game going sometimes. And that's kind of crazy when you look at some of the stats that they've put up with Isaac Brown. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for Louisville.
Yeah, Louisville, along with a great passing attack, they have a great running back, and that is Isaac Brown. He is a stud, and he does what he needs to do behind passing attack like that. And on the other side, Miami doesn't run the ball very well, but they have 3 backs that get carries, and that is Damian Martinez, Jordan Lyle, and Mark Fletcher Jr. But Damian Martinez is the lead back. He gets the most carries, even though that's not many. 66 is not a lot. But he's still got 300 yards almost and 5 touchdowns. So he's doing what he's supposed to do.
A lot of the limited carries for Martinez has been due to an injury that he suffered. But again, they don't have an elite rushing attack. That is something that if they were to lose a football game, a lot of it would be that they only can trust their passing attack. In the air, they've had a lot of success. On the ground, it's been limited. Looking at the receiving attack for both teams, of course, we've talked about both these teams have stud receivers. Xavier Restrepo is the guy that when Cam Ward needs to be bailed out of a play, he throws the ball up and Restrepo makes something happen. On the other side for Louisville, their deep target and the threat that is Ja'Cory Brooks. Multiple times this year, he's scored 50-plus yard touchdowns. He's an elite downfield target, and it's obviously important in this game to see how Miami plans on stopping him. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
I think, Louisville's got a great passing attack behind Ja'Cory Brooks. Sadly, he left Alabama, but been nice to have him. He's doing great. He's doing really good. Their running back is averaging 8 yards a carry on 59 carries, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And obviously you have Cam Ward, the best quarterback in the nation right now.
Yeah, Miami has that advantage with him. And then, like you said, Isaac Brown, to backpack off what Dalton said, elite running back. In games that he has got the ball a lot, it's unstoppable. They have an elite downfield target in Ja'Cory Brooks. They have Isaac Brown, who, like you just mentioned, is averaging almost 8 or 9 yards per carry, elite running back. And then Tyler Shuck, who doesn't make mistakes, only 3 interceptions on the year. It is a hard offense to stop from Louisville. Going to make a pick in this game. Julio, if you want to lead us.
Give me the U.
He's taking the U, Dalton. What do you think about that?
The U they're gonna find a way to win this game, but I'm gonna go U down. Louisville.
Dalton picks the upset there. I hate Miami myself, especially after what happened earlier.
Obviously.
And as a Tech fan, it sucks. But truthfully, we need Miami to win games for us to have a chance in the conference. So for me, I'm going to go Miami, and apparently the ACC Replay Center wants them to win as well. Next game here, Notre Dame on the road traveling to Georgia Tech. Both of these teams have looked really good at points in this season. And then, of course, both of them have taken losses to teams they shouldn't lose to. Notre Dame, of course, with the fluke loss to NIU. And since then, they've looked like a far better football team than that game. It was rough. And then Georgia Tech, still a team that can compete in the conference. And really, they have big wins in conference play already. We'll see what they can do for the rest of the year. Looking at the stats for both of these teams, the quarterbacks are pretty daggone good in this game. Both these guys run the ball really well. I mean, you're talking about 2 quarterbacks that each have over 300 rushing yards. And one of them is a guy that he was expected to be a dynamic runner in Haynes King, a phenomenal rushing quarterback with almost 1,600 passing yards. If you can do both of those things in college football today, especially, you are an elite quarterback. On the other side, 979 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he's been a much better runner than we expected him to be. I mean, we're getting elite production from him every week running the ball. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for both of these teams.
Yeah, Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard carry this rushing attack for Notre Dame, and it's because it's insane. Combined together, they have 831 yards, which is great with their running back, which is one backfield. That's one backfield with the running back and quarterback, and that's absurd. And with Georgia Tech, obviously you have Haynes King, maybe the best rushing quarterback in college football. Maybe there's some people other there that you can throw out there with him. And Jamal Haynes is the running back, and Haynes is doing good too. I mean, he's averaging like 5 yards a carry, and that's great, especially when you have a quarterback that can run the ball as good as he can.
Yeah, both backfields really good at running the ball. Yeah. Of course, like you said, it's a dynamic running attack from both teams with quarterback and running back both being overproduced at a high level. Looking at the receiving attack for both of these teams, kind of underwhelming for Notre Dame and had been this year, but they found a guy in Collins with 21 catches, 266 yards, and a touchdown. He's become more of a target that they've hit here and there. And then, of course, Jeremiah Love. In the passing attack, he's used a lot. They actually space out Love at slot sometimes, and they'll throw Love a lot of screens and let him make plays. I mean, Jeremiah Love is their playmaker at Notre Dame. On the other side for Georgia Tech, Malik Rutherford. The dude is unbelievable. He's a great receiver in college football, one of the best receivers in the ACC, and Haynes King knows what to do. I mean, he gets him the ball and lets him make plays. And again, this Georgia Tech team, we're now talking about their 8th game already this year. So they're very experienced. When talking about teams in college football, there's not a lot of teams that have the experience that Georgia Tech does. Going to make a pick here, Georgia Tech does have this game at home. However, I think Notre Dame gets it done on the road. I think Notre Dame, they know that if they can go undefeated the rest of the year, they're going to make the college football playoff. They don't have to play a conference championship game, and they're going to be a high enough ranked team to sneak in there. I think that they know that. I think that they are coached well enough, and I think that they have the good enough players to do so. We'll see if they can finish it out the rest of the year, but I do think they get this one done on the road. Julio, if you want to go ahead and make a pick.
Give me the Fighting Irish because they've got like a chip on their shoulder after losing to NIU earlier in the year. They've got to win out. There's like no, you can't lose another game. They have to win out.
I'm gonna go with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I like that Notre Dame team. They've struggled with one loss this year. We're just gonna put that in the past. This team's gonna be in the playoffs because they have an easy rest. They have a cupcake schedule after for the rest of it. So I'm gonna go the Fighting Irish.
Next game here, Michigan traveling to Illinois. Of course, a big game in the conference with both of these teams looking to compete still in the Big Ten. A lot of that's not been done by Michigan's passing attack. They don't have much, and that's evident by looking at their stats. I mean, quarterback Davis Warren is their leading passer on the year, a guy that has literally only started in 4 of their 6 games this year. Actually, I don't even know if he started in 4 of the 6. I think Alex Orji had taken over, somewhere in the last couple of weeks. This passing attack is awful. I mean, they are now leaning on a quarterback in Jack Tuttle, who has not played but 1 game as a starting quarterback in college football. It is an awful passing attack, but somehow they're still in it with their rushing game. On the other side for Illinois, they have an elite quarterback in Luke Altmaier, who's had a really good year with 1,400 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, and only the 1 pick, and played phenomenal last week. He's the guy that just gets it done every week. He's very consistent, and again, protects the football. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack, as it's pretty much all Michigan has.
Michigan's rushing attack is all they have, and that is Khalil Mullings. He's an absolute stud, and supposedly a stud, Donovan Edwards. I mean, he's played good the last week or two, but before that, he was terrible. And I mean, he's on the cover of NCAA college football. You think he's a stud? Like you had Johnny, the people in the past on there. He's nowhere near as good as them, but he's getting there. I feel like this week will be a breakout week for him. He's going to get a few carries, and they'll do pretty good. And on the other side of the ball, Illinois, they don't really rely on the rushing attack that much, but Caden Fegan he's a good when he has the ball. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. And with that, he's just doing what he needs to do with the passing attack like they have.
Yeah, they have good rushing attack on both sides. Of course, like you said, Illinois doesn't use theirs near as much as Michigan does. Michigan has to rely solely on that rushing game. If they want to have any chance in this game to stay in it, especially because they want to be able to control clock, that rushing attack has to be elite. Khalil Mullings is a big dude, former linebacker, now playing running back. And then also Donovan Edwards, an elite rusher in his past, and has looked like a pretty good rusher in the last couple of weeks. But again, we haven't seen that from him all year. We don't really know what to expect. Looking at the receiving side of things for them, Colston Loveland is their guy. Again, we've talked about him many times that if each quarterback in that system would just learn, let's target our stud. Let's at least get him in the passing attack. If we can't do anything else, let's at least go to the tight end that arguably one of the best in the country. How is he not getting more receptions on the season? With only 29 catches through 6 games, he's a guy to me that I feel like should be targeted 7, 8, even maybe 10 times a game, and I don't feel like they use him enough. On the other side for Illinois, they do go to their star guy a lot. But again, still doesn't have a ton of receptions. He's more of a deep threat guy, and Pat Bryant. He's very unique, and they use him in a lot of ways. They use him out of the backfield to play, like I said a couple weeks ago. They played him at fullback, and he ran a route out of the backfield and scored a touchdown. It's a very unique passing attack, and Altmaier knows how to get the ball to his guys. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
Illinois has a great passing attack, and Michigan's passing offense might be one of the worst in college football. Yeah. Just because they just can't throw the ball. They cannot throw the ball.
Going to make a pick in these games. Illinois at home, of course, that's a big advantage in the Big Ten. Michigan, to me, is not a team that I think can hang in there with Illinois at all. I really do think Illinois' passing attack will dominate this football game, and maybe if Michigan runs the ball really well, they can keep it close. But I like Illinois a lot, and Luke Altmaier, an elite quarterback. Julio, you're going to have to make your pick.
Illinois has a great passing attack. Michigan has Will Johnson, who's the best cornerback in college football. I still think Illinois wins this game, though.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Illinois, too. But because I don't think Michigan's a top 25 football team. If you can't pass the football in 2024, you're not a good football team.
Next game here, LSU traveling to Arkansas. Arkansas, of course, coming off the big win against Tennessee. And it's important that LSU doesn't get ahead of themselves. Don't just think because we just beat Ole Miss and that we've got to look ahead to games down the schedule that are more important than this one. Do not pass up Arkansas. As Dalton knows, as a Tennessee fan, Arkansas is legit, and even with their quarterback situation, we don't really know about Taylor Green's health. Taylor Green is phenomenal when he's playing, and he can beat a lot of teams with the plays that he makes. Although he isn't the greatest decision maker, as you can see by looking at the stats. He does have 5 interceptions to his 5 touchdowns. That's the one blemish on him as a quarterback, is he makes questionable decisions here and there. But he's still a 1,500-yard passer. On the other side for LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, an elite quarterback in college football and has really looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Top 10 guy, in my opinion. And he might even be throwing his name in there for that Heisman contention, especially down the line if he can beat some of these teams he has left. Almost a 2,000-yard passer right now with 18 touchdowns. Again, the one mistake is he's throwing a pick per game on average. You can't have that. When you play teams down the road that are as competitive as a team just like Ole Miss you just played, those mistakes will lose you a football game at some point if you keep making them. And they've already lost a game to a team earlier in the year that is now 3-3 in USC. But again, I think he's a really good quarterback. Dalton, if you want to talk about the rushing attack for both of these teams.
Yeah, LSU lost their stud running back week 1, and they had a freshman fill the spot, Caden Durham, and he has filled it pretty good because you have another situation where you have a great passing attack at LSU. And obviously, I hate talking about Arkansas running attack because they beat my Vols a couple of weeks ago. And Jaquindon Jackson, he's a stud. I mean, when he gets the ball, he does what he needs to, and he gets 5 yards. And Taylor Green, great rushing quarterback.
Yeah.
Because they had that dynamic offense, like a lot of the things we mentioned before. I mean, Tennessee, with their defensive line, struggled against this Arkansas offense. And that just surprises me because their defensive line is so good. And that just shows you how good this Arkansas running game is. And I'm still going to say it. I think they might have the best rushing attack in the SEC.
Yeah, they have one of the best rushing attacks for sure. You could argue Vanderbilt. Yep. You could even argue your own team in Tennessee. But yep. Arkansas is great at running the ball. Looking at the receiving game for both these teams, Kyron Lacy is him. I don't know if you've seen some of these highlight reels they're posting everywhere, but Kyron Lacy makes play after play after play. And it was in the game where he needed it, in the moment he needed it, he called his shot. They're in the huddle on the sideline. It's right after Ole Miss had kicked a field goal to go up by 3 in overtime. Kyron Lacy, he looks at the quarterback, he says, "Get me one-on-one on the outside and throw it up to me. I'll make a play." What happens? First play, 25-yard touchdown, game over. LSU wins. Kyron Lacy is a guy that will each and every week he'll make plays, and that's important in a game against Arkansas, who does have a pretty solid defense. On the other side for Arkansas, Armstrong's a superstar. 38 catches, 552 yards, and still doesn't have a touchdown on the year. It's every time they get to the goal line, as you can see with the 10 touchdowns Jaquindon Jackson, Ding. It's a handoff. Yeah, only 5 passing touchdowns by Green and 10 rushing by Jackson, and Green has some rushing as well. They like to run the ball when they get down on the goal line, but I would expect Armstrong to score some point this season because of how good he is. Julio, you have anything you want to add?
If it wasn't for Tennessee, trying to kill Taylor Green, I think, Arkansas might be in this game. But with the backup quarterback, I don't know, because I remember watching that Tennessee game, and it was hard for the center to adjust to a guy who's like 6'5", to a guy who's like 6'2", maybe. That's Maggard and Dalton.
He's shorter than 6'2". He's probably like 5'11".
Yeah, as Maggard and Dalton know, being a center going from a guy who's 6'5" to that short, you can't do that. You cannot do that.
Me and Dalton both did that in high school. We had a
6'8", and then you had one that Dylan that was 5'11". So I mean, I went to the same thing, and that's
the thing though. I think Arkansas can compete in this game if Green's playing. But with Green not playing, I feel like LSU wins probably by 2 touchdowns.
No, I think you're 100% correct. If Taylor Green were to not play in this football game, which I think he's tracking to play, but if he were to not play, I 1,000% agree with you. This would be a bad blowout. I think it'd be more than 2 touchdowns. Yeah. This is an LSU team that's pretty elite, and they can pass the ball all over you. If you can't hang in there at all, I mean, it's going to be ugly. Going to make a pick here. Arkansas does have the home game, which is always important in SEC environments. But I think LSU takes this one. Again, I think LSU is one of the best teams in the country. I think they are very deservedly in the top 10. And I expect LSU to compete down the road the rest of the schedule. They have a lot of big-time games. And this LSU team, to me, looks like a playoff team so far. Dalton, if you want to go ahead and make your pick.
I'm going to go LSU because I just don't think Green's just capable. After he said there was a dirty hit on him, I don't. It could have been called dirty, but I don't think it was his fault. We're going to go LSU here.
Like I said before, I think, if Green plays this game, it's going to be a good game, but if Green doesn't play, I feel like, LSU wins by a few scores, maybe more than a few.
Next game here, a little FCS football. We're talking about 2 powerhouses. If you wanted to compare dynasties and look at who's who in football in general, this is your Alabama-Georgia matchup in FCS football. This is 2 of the most elite programs and have been 2 of the most elite programs in the FCS in the last 10 years. North Dakota State with multiple championships throughout that time. And both these teams coming from the FCS produce NFL talent. Looking at the stats for both these teams, South Dakota State's quarterback Mark Gronowski has a pretty good year going right now with 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. Only issue, he does throw picks. That is something on the other side North Dakota State's quarterback Cam Miller doesn't do. 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, no interceptions. He has a 77% completion percentage. This is an elite quarterback in FCS play. This is a guy that played Colorado up until the very end and truly could have won that football game. This North Dakota State team, to me, is one of the best teams in FCS and have been for a long time. We expect this game to be a really good, close game. Dalton, if you want to talk about the running game for both of these teams.
Both teams have great running games, and that's to be known because they're such dominant teams. And the FCS level, they don't pass the ball as much, and it's more of a run-heavy thing because of there's not as many athletes on the field. Like, for instance, like you don't have an Oregon team that has just athletes everywhere.
Yeah.
You have to rely on your running back to be able to get carries. Yeah, South Dakota State has two stud running backs, and that is Amar Johnson and Kirby Voorhees, which might be the coolest last name in college football. And they're both 30 because at schools like this, you don't have crazy athletes, and you got to rely on your running game heavy because you're going to have big offensive linemen, and those schools have produced stud offensive linemen in the NFL. North Dakota State has Shamar Brown, and he is the stud. And get this, he's a freshman. That could be a guy you look in the transfer portal here soon. He might be trying to go somewhere power forward because if you're that good as a freshman, and also a backup Barik Panu, that's another two running back team, and they're all good. I mean, having two running backs for a team is studly, and Shamar Brown, look at him for somewhere power four soon because usually if a freshman's good here, he might transfer out unless he just feels comfortable there.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell by looking at his stats, he's a guy that they use consistently with 115 carries already through 7. A guy they rely heavily on, and like you mentioned, they have another back that is also really good, and that helps this offense in general. I mean, when you're able to run the ball and then pass the ball so well like Cam Miller does, it's a dynamic attack. When you look at the receivers for both of these teams, South Dakota State has production from a lot of guys, but their lead receiver with 32 catches for 407 yards and 4 touchdowns. Gronowski is a good quarterback. We've talked about how he can get the ball out and get it to his guys. On the other side for North Dakota State, Bryce Lance is the leading receiver with 35 catches, 418 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think, Julio, you have something you want to mention about him.
That's the brother of Trey Lance. He played for NDSU too, and he got drafted like top 5.
Yeah, high draft pick. Of course, it hasn't worked out for him in the NFL. Going to make a pick in this game, it is the FCS showdown. It's the game. It's a potential rematch later in the year for a championship. NDSU gets the home game. I'm taking NDSU. I think Cam Miller. I think Bryce Lance. I think, like you said, Shamar Brown, a freshman running back playing as good as he's playing. It's a team to me that's really hard to beat. And although SDSU is ranked first in FCS right now, NDSU is right behind them at 2, and I think they take that top spot. NDSU wins this one. Dalton, if you want to go and make your pick.
I'm gonna go NDSU. I like the Bison. They're tough and they've been good the last few years, and I see their coach pulling through and winning the ball game here.
I'll take NDSU as well. I mean, they almost beat Colorado.
Next game here, Georgia traveling to Texas. Of course, this is very important in SEC play. Georgia looks to win this game because if they don't, it's almost impossible for them to find a route to the SEC championship game. And Texas, the best team in the country, every defensive metric would say so in points and yards. They're elite on both sides of the ball. Diving into the stats, as you can see, Texas' leading passer is Arch Manning still, but Quinn Ewers is healthy, fully ready to go for this game. And then the second half of that Oklahoma game, he was dominant and really looked like the guy we expect him to be. On the other side for Georgia, Carson Beck has really turned his season around since that Alabama game where he played the worst game I've seen him play in a long time, and that's even with him having a phenomenal second half. Looking at the rushing attack for both these teams, Dalton, you can't really see elite numbers looking at their backs because of their passing game, but if you want to dive into the stats, it's better than it looks.
Yeah. Georgia has 2 elite running backs, and that in Nate Frazier and Trevor Etienne. Nate Frazier tends to be the big bruiser guy, and Etienne is the guy that you get the ball, just get him and let him play many plays. And Texas has a stud running back and also another stud running back in Quintravion Wisner and Jadon Blue. Both of them are crazy good, and I would honestly like to see them both get the ball more. But even though they pass the ball so much, because you have 2 running backs that are really good, both sides of the ball, you have 2 really good running backs.
Yeah, you talked about the rushing attack for both of these teams. It's going to be super important. And yes, it will be hard for Georgia to run the ball against this Texas D-line and a Texas team that controls the running game really well. But they do have blue chip prospects on both sides of the ball. Both of these teams have elite running backs that can make plays. You saw that whenever Frazier played really well against Clemson to start the year without Etienne being there. He missed the game. Frazier was able to step in and be a guy for the whole game. He wasn't just a goal line back. He was able to get him up and down the field as their lead back. Now they have Trevor Etienne, a guy that can catch passes and be a dynamic rusher. And on the other side, for Texas, they lost their back coming into the season. Baxter's out for the year. They don't expect him to come back. And Quintravion Wisner had to step up and be that guy. he's been really good. He's only got 45 carries, but he's led to 300 yards almost, 2 touchdowns, as well as Jadon Blue, who gets the ball a lot in the receiving game. Looking at the receiving attack for both teams, of course, Georgia's got a pretty good bay of receivers, a lot of guys that make plays. Looking at Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell, all guys that make plays for them, and they all had great second halves in that game against Alabama. They've proven what they can do against good defenses. We'll see if Beck can use them, and he has been using them well lately. On the other side for Texas, Isaiah Bond, obviously one of the stud receivers in football this year, and they also have Ryan Wingo, who's been phenomenal, a young guy that's going to be a playmaker in the future for them. Julio, if you have anything you want to add, I know you probably have a little bit against old Isaiah Bond there.
The Auburn game last year, it kept us in the playoffs last year, but, it'd be great to have him this year. Georgia has a very underrated receiving core. And they also have a tight end who is he was supposed to be one of the best tight ends in the country this year. Oscar Delp has not done anything. But yeah, like you said, for Georgia to win this game, Beck has to play a perfect game because Texas defense is so good.
Going to make a pick in this game. Texas has the home game here. Of course, like I said before, Georgia needs a win here. They have to win this one to stay relevant in the conference championship conversation. I think Texas takes it. I think Texas just has an elite offense and elite defense. And to me, on both sides of the ball, they're one of the best teams in the country, if not the best. And they produce on offense. They stop everybody on defense. Texas takes this one. Julio, if you want to make your pick here.
Like I said before, Beck has to play a perfect game. He's got to, can't throw turn picks. I mean, if he plays like he did the first half against Alabama, Georgia might lose by 20. Yeah, I'm taking Texas.
Yep, I'm going to go for Georgia to upset the world here. I think Carson Beck's going to play a good football game here and change the CFP, make it go crazy. Because if Texas loses, who knows what's going on there.
Again, like I've stated many times, Texas is the best team in the country, but I agree with Dalton when he says he thinks Beck's going to play well. I really expect Beck to come out ready for this one because he come out for the last big game not prepared, not ready. I expect a good game from Carson Beck. I just think Texas is so good that they Next game here, a game that has massive implications. A game, as you can tell, we've got 2 representatives for both of these teams. This is massive. I mean, this is huge in the college football world. Last time Tennessee played Alabama at Neyland, it was a massive victory for Tennessee. One of the biggest wins that they've had in the last 10 years. I mean, it mattered so much to their fans. That was really their national championship that year when they got that win. This game, we're looking at both sides that have struggled coming into this one. We have 2 teams coming off 2 rough games against opponents that they're expected to beat and truly expected to beat by a lot. Coming into the year, these were 2 top 10 programs expected to have top-tier offenses, good defenses, and it's kind of looked different for both teams. Bama has had a really good offense, but really struggled on defense. Tennessee's had a really bad offense in the last couple weeks, but been great on defense. So we'll see how that counters each other in this game and which team can figure out the other side of the ball to win. Looking at the stats, Jalen Milroe having a good year so far, but like I said last week, he almost killed his Heisman chances with a bad game against South Carolina. He has 1,400 passing yards on the year, 12 touchdowns through the air, has the 4 picks, and 2 of those coming last week. And obviously, he's a great rushing quarterback. He's one of the best in the country at rushing, and he converts a lot when they're in the red zone. They have a lot of design plays for him. And that South Carolina game, if you watch the second half, and I know both these guys did, it was a lot of running from him. He just couldn't throw the ball in that game, and he looked dead tired at the end of that game. He was taking shot after shot, but he just knew what he had to do to finish it one, because if they lost that one too, I mean, who knows what would have happened. I mean, we'd have had everybody would have been calling for DeBoer's job. Looking at the other side of the ball for Tennessee, Nico, a quarterback that coming into the year was expected to be a top-tier quarterback in the SEC. He struggled a lot in the last couple of games. He's had those freshman woes, and mistakes that he makes can cost this team a game. Their defense plays well enough for them to win, but just don't let your offense cost you the game. And I think the conservative play calling will stop in this game because they know what they have to do to win.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson he's the leading rusher in the SEC, and he just proves it to everybody. It's completely different than the team 2 years ago that you faced. To that team 2 years ago, Smalls was great, obviously, but we run the ball. That's what we do this year. And it shows. Dylan Sampson has 700 rushing yards, and that is insane.
I personally believe Alabama has. Their rushing game is not as good as it usually is. They mostly focus on throwing the football, but you got to think. Miller's got 51 carries, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns, and also their other back, Justice Haynes, he's pretty good as well. Jalen Milroe has 11 rushing touchdowns on the year. That's crazy. If one would say that's nuts.
Yeah, from a
But
quarterback, I mean, he does what he needs to do down there in the rushing area. And like I mentioned, they draw up a lot of plays for him when they get to the goal line. Looking at the receiving attack for both of these teams, of course, both sides of the ball, they do really well in the receiving game. Both teams have elite receivers. Julio, if you want to talk about the receiving attack for Alabama.
you obviously have Ryan Williams, who's arguably one of the best receivers in college football, as only a 17-year-old. We have Bernard, and hopefully they can, get Kendrick Law involved in this game because he's fast and he can change a game. But yeah, mostly Ryan Williams he's Milroe's go-to.
Yeah. I mean, if downfield in big situations, they've went to him a lot. Dalton, if you want to talk about the receiving attack for Tennessee, they've faced some injuries
Yeah,
here.
injury. We were very injury prone a couple weeks ago, and I mean, I'm hoping that Bru McCoy comes back because he didn't come back last week, and he's an elite. He's probably Nico's favorite target because of how good Bru can catch the ball. And you also have Squirrel White. Like the list just keeps going. Like we have stud receivers. Teipel just doesn't want to throw the ball to him. I don't know why. I guess he just doesn't trust Nico, but I hope he opens the ball up to the receivers because air receivers are so good.
Yeah, they have elite athletes on the outside. Of course, Thornton only has 9 catches, but he has almost 300 yards.
Yeah.
That's elite. And then Bru McCoy, like you mentioned, missing last week's game. It was obviously missed in that game. They almost fumbled a game that they can't lose. And like I said, same thing with Bama. The games that were close that they have to finish out at the end of the year. They have to win these games because towards the end of the season, if you have losses like that, it's gonna really ruin your chances to make the playoffs. Going to make a pick here. I think both of them have their picks made. We're talking about two teams that are, again, elite football teams. Coming into the year, we expected them to compete for playoff spots. I like Tennessee at home here. I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't. Coming in this game, it was a hard choice for me because both these teams are struggling so bad right now. And to me, the only thing that is a difference maker in this game is home field advantage. They are such close teams when it comes to what they've done wrong and how they've made mistakes that I just think Tennessee's defense gets to Milroe. He struggled with his offensive line protecting him. And I think Tennessee's rushing attack is just too good. And I'm taking Tennessee at home here. Dalton, if you want to go ahead and make your pick.
You know where I'm going, but I want to throw something else in there. We have maybe the best defense in the country, and Milroe can't handle it. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And James Pierce is going to absolutely just wreak havoc on their offense. And, I mean, I'm excited to watch it. I know Brendan is. He's going to say something else. Just don't listen to anything he says, I'm going to be honest, because he doesn't know ball.
All right, Julio. I'll let you finish this off. I know you want to rant. Let it flow. Go ahead and say what you want to say.
I mean, like when you're a Tennessee fan and you played Kent State and Chattanooga the first 2 weeks of the season, of course you think Nico is the best quarterback in the country. I mean, if Jalen Milroe played Chattanooga and Kent State he'd probably have 20 rushing touchdowns on the year, not 11. He'd have 20. But I'll give Tennessee props where it is. Their defense is very good. And that scares me for an Alabama fan because our offensive line has played horrible. Milroe's got to, give the ball to Ryan Williams and hopefully make plays with his legs, is what he does best. And hopefully we can see the D-line do something this week.
Yeah, they need the pass rush to start up. They've had elite pass rushes in the past, and that's been a big difference maker in games. This year they haven't had it, and we'll see which side will get it done. This is a big one.
Obviously, I'm going Alabama. I mean,
I can see the field goal post coming down in Neyland again.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week. Of course, this is a fun episode. We've got a sibling rivalry with their teams, and of course, they hate the other team. They hate each other. Tennessee, Alabama. Again, thank you so much for joining. I'll let you go first, Dalton, if you have anything else you want to add.
Yeah, just gonna say that the field goal post will be in the river this weekend. Go look for it in the Tennessee River. Vols by 50.
Vols by 50. Julio, if you have anything you want to add, go ahead.
Let's roll Tide by 90.
Tide by 90. We've heard 2 calls here. Tide by 90. Vols by 50. Again, thank you so much for joining, guys. Like and subscribe if you enjoy it. And little friendly banter. I guess you could call it friendly. I don't know how friendly it is. These two guys really don't like each other. But we'll see you guys next time when we review these games. And peace.
Peace.